IT has a constant challenge to stay aligned with the business. The organization has users from all different departments, making demands on IT for this feature, that software, this level of access, etc. It's a challenge because the business has needs. Okay, maybe some of these needs are more wants than needs, and you have to have your IT roadmap. How can you balance the two and make the business units feel as though they're being supported while the IT organization is staying true to the larger commitments you've made to the organization? Let's discuss some strategies to manifest this alignment. Hi, I'm Steve Murphy. I'm a vice president at ARG, and while I work at ARG, this video is my own and does not represent the views or opinions of my employer. This channel is dedicated to helping IT leaders make great business decisions. And here's the common problem. I've worked in a bunch of different groups within various organizations, from finance to marketing to sales, and also in technology. And the problem is the IT organization is viewed as the department of no. When a group wants something from IT that's not already in the plan, it's usually very difficult to make it happen for the requesting organization. Budgets, resources, especially human resources, are usually full and allocated to other projects. The normal response might be, let's see if we can get a schedule for next year. The requesting organization hears this as a no. So after a while, people stop bringing requests to IT. They just assume they're going to get rejected. And so when a need arises, they might fulfill that need through a consultant or going directly to a solution provider and purchasing a hosted service, or maybe even hiring their own technical resources. Those resources would be internal to the requesting department, so it can support their immediate needs. In many situations, we want to say no. It can be healthy. Many of the requests IT received are ill-conceived, ill-defined, and maybe a little more than a good idea. But that good idea might fade in attractiveness over time. And by forcing the initiative into the longer-term planning process, we create space for the concept to mature and for the requesting organization to evaluate their requests over time and whether or not the expected returns will manifest. But some requests are critical to an organization achieving the business outcomes that they have committed to right now to the organization. It may be poor planning on their part, but it happens all the time. A goal is committed to, but IT was not informed of the impacts until it's time for the other group to execute. IT is supposed to drop what they're working on and accommodate this request. This leads to clashes of priorities, and those who get prioritized lower, they end up feeling negatively about the outcome and maybe the IT department in general. What happens in these environments, however, is that the IT department has to say no to most, if not all, requests. Again, this creates the perception outside the IT department that it's rigid, that it does not care about the business units hitting their goals, and of course, nothing further from the truth. The IT organizations I've worked with have been entirely dedicated to moving the company forward. But IT has an obligation to be methodical, structured, and careful what it commits to support. However, perception is reality for those outside of the IT organization, and the inability of a business unit to get the things they believe they need to succeed is frustrating and leads, as I said, to shadow IT. So as a business leader, IT must foster better working relationships with the business units. Now let's talk about some ways to drive closer relationships with your peers and other departments. And in so doing, bring the IT organization into closer alignment with these other teams. The first rule of any alignment process is to understand the goals, objectives, and plans of the other groups. This results from executive communication, typically around those goals and objectives, and collaborating on IT's role in assisting those organizations meet those goals and objectives. This is fairly obvious, and IT leaders need to get out and meet their peers in other organizations. Take them to lunch, grab a coffee, schedule a 15-minute video call where you can meet and talk face-to-face. By the way, I say 15 minutes because if you've not done something like this before, you may be met with some skepticism, and virtual meetings can be awkward without a clearly defined agenda. Asking for 15 minutes is unintrusive, and you're more likely to get the meeting than asking for an hour or so. Just my opinion. Also, it's best to conduct these meetings during or just before the strategic planning process. And again, immediately following the planning process. But if you're 6 months away from that planning process to start, don't wait. You can begin building those relationships as soon as possible. Our approach in these meetings is simply to understand and definitely not to say no. There's an old adage when it comes to negotiation that you seek first to understand and then to be understood. If you can leave these meetings with an understanding of the challenges and especially the technology challenges, you're one step closer to finding alignment opportunities. Before the meeting, if you don't know the person, do some basic research, right? Check their LinkedIn profile, see where they've worked in the past and what roles have they had in your organization. In the meeting, keep it high level. Get to know them personally, keep notes so you can refer to something personal about them in the future. This is a basic Dale Carnegie step in how to win friends and influence people. Your objective in the meeting is to understand their approach to hitting their objectives, not the detailed plan itself. At the end of the meeting, thank them for their time and ask them who in their organization is the best person to discuss technology needs. This is going to be your team's immediate contact. Get that person's information, contact information, and reach out to them immediately within the hour if possible. And why the urgency here? Well, I hate to tell you, but IT has a reputation of taking its time. So if you show urgency and you're taking one step closer to breaking that IT stigma. You can get your meeting with the next person set up and bring one of your direct reports into that meeting. You're going to drive the meeting, but one of your team members is going to get the action items and the follow-up tasks typically. One thing I suggest is for IT leaders to have their team spend time with with users from the other organization and watch how they interact with the IT tools. I refer to these as day in the life ofs. Send your team members out into the field and let them sit with their departments as though they were members of those departments. And then have them write a brief report on their observations and send that to your executive contacts in that department as a demonstration of what you've learned and that you are taking the initiative. Once your team members have documented their observations, then you can fill them in on the larger strategy for what that group is trying to accomplish and discuss whether they seem to have the tools necessary to hit their goals. It's a personal opinion of mine, a personal preference, but I don't like discussing the other department's goals with the observers who are running these day in the life ofs before they make their observations, because having them make general observations rather than specific ones related to the goals will provide for a better observation process in general. It'll be more broad and it may uncover some things that can be handled immediately rather than focusing specifically on the objectives and having a more narrow perspective. Okay, let's look at an example. Let's say that the finance department has a goal of closing the quarterly numbers in 5 business days after the quarter end. Today, they're missing that goal, frequently taking 8 to 10 days to finalize the quarterly results. This delay puts undue pressure on senior management and the legal and investor relations departments to craft the materials for the public quarterly financial release. Your day in the life of experiences show that there are numerous closing activities that need to take place in a very short amount of time. Sales numbers need to be finalized and entered into the ERP system. Closing journal entries need to be made to accrue expenses and liabilities as well as receivables, and then those same journal entries need to be reversed after the books have been closed. It's a complicated accounting thing, but it's necessary to present an accurate picture of the organization's results at the end of each quarter. While the finance organization has a process, the process relies upon manually pulling reports from different business units and summarizing the activity to create those closing entries. The finance department's goal of hitting 5 days entails pulling additional resources from neighboring groups into the accounting department for several days to assist with this process. This throwing bodies at a problem approach might be successful, but if you think there's a technology solution that can help, you'll be in a good position to make that recommendation. You might begin to socialize what a robotic process automation experiment or implementation can do for the finance group in streamlining their efforts and automating the gathering and assembly maybe even the posting and reversing of those closing entries. Now, maybe you've been looking for an application to do robotic process automation for a while. This seems like a perfect opportunity. And in working with the finance department, they agreed to fund a contractor to come in and assess the viability of such a deployment. Now you're on your way to aligning the IT organization with the finance department. All it cost you was a few meetings and some creative thinking. Seems easy, right? Well, it isn't. Of course, it's harder than I've described, but the hardest part is the very first part. The part about taking the initiative to be curious, reaching out to peers and asking to be let into their world to see if you can assist them with their goals. That's the hardest part. But with your leadership, you can just start the snowball and set it in motion. Set some clear directives about the course that the snowball will take and see what it looks like at the bottom of the hill. In doing so, you can shift the perception of the IT department from a group that's focused on keeping things running to a group that's focused on the success of individual organizations within the broader company. If you want to discuss this topic further or any of the other topics on my channel, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is in the description of this video. If you got some value out of this video, I'd appreciate a like, and thank you very much in advance for doing that. And if you want to find your way back to this channel in the future, just hit that subscribe button. That will put my new videos in your feed and make it easy for you to find your way back here whenever it's convenient for you to do so. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.